Think about the last time life knocked you down hard. Maybe it was a job rejection that stung deeper than expected, a project that collapsed despite your best efforts, or a personal loss that left you feeling untethered. In those moments, the world doesn't pause for your pain. It keeps moving, leaving you with a choice: crumble under the weight of it all, or find a way to rise. This is where Stoicism isn't just philosophy, it's a lifeline. Picture Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful men, writing his private reflections by candlelight, not from a place of ease, but in the middle of war, plague, and betrayal. His words weren't theoretical, they were survival tools, and that's exactly what we're diving into today. 26 Stoic techniques to not just endure setbacks, but to dominate them with relentless grit. These aren't abstract ideas, they're battle-tested strategies used by emperors, athletes, and modern-day warriors alike. Epictetus, born enslaved, taught that the one thing we truly control is our response, our ability to say, "This hurts, but it doesn't have to break me." Imagine carrying that mindset into your daily life. The coworker who undermines you, the financial setback that keeps you up at night. Stoicism turns these into fuel. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about channeling it into unstoppable action. By the end of this video, you'll have more than inspiration, you'll have a toolkit. We'll break down each technique with clarity, from reframing obstacles as opportunities to mastering the art of negative visualization. Yes, imagining the worst can actually set you free. This isn't about passive acceptance, it's about active defiance against anything life throws your way. So if you're ready to transform adversity into advantage, to stare down challenges with the calm focus of a Stoic, then let's begin. The first step, recognizing that every setback is secretly your strongest teacher, if you're willing to learn. The first and most powerful tool in your Stoic arsenal is understanding the dichotomy of control. Epictetus put it bluntly: some things are within our power while others are not. At first glance, that sounds simple, almost too simple, but when you really let it sink in, it becomes revolutionary. Think about how much mental energy we waste agonizing over things we can't change. Traffic jams, other people's opinions, yesterday's mistakes. Stoicism flips the script by asking one radical question: is this within my control? If not, your job isn't to fix it, it's to release it. Here's how to put this into practice right now. Grab a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On one side, write what I control: your effort, your attitude, your choices. On the other side, what I don't control: the weather, the economy, whether someone likes you. Most of our suffering comes from mixing up these columns. Ever lost sleep over a work presentation? You control your preparation, not the outcome. Stressed about a friend's text that went unanswered? You control your communication, not their response. Try this. Pick one thing from your don't control list that's been weighing on you. Maybe it's a family member's health, a promotion you didn't get, or even something as trivial as a delayed package. Now say out loud, "This isn't mine to carry." Feel that. That's the weight lifting. This isn't about giving up, it's about focusing your energy where it actually matters. The Stoics weren't passive, they were strategic. They knew that by accepting the limits of control, you free yourself to fight the battles you can actually win. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he wasn't just philosophizing. He was ruling an empire during a plague, facing betrayal, yet choosing where to direct his attention. That's the power of this technique. It turns chaos into clarity. So next time frustration starts to bubble up, pause and ask, "Is this mine to solve?" If not, let it go like a Stoic, not with resignation, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly where their power lies. Now let's move to the second Stoic technique, one that might sound counterintuitive at first: Premeditatio Malorum, or the Premeditation of Evils. This isn't about dwelling on the worst-case scenario out of fear. It's about rehearsing for life's inevitable challenges so they lose their power to shock you. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, called this fortifying the mind in advance. Imagine standing in a boxing ring, blindfolded versus stepping in with your eyes wide open, prepared for every possible punch. That's the difference between facing life unprepared and using this practice to stay unshaken. Here's how it works. Every morning, take just a few minutes to ask yourself, what could go wrong today? Maybe your commute will be derailed by traffic, a client meeting might turn hostile, or a project you've poured your heart into could fall apart. Instead of avoiding those thoughts, lean into them, not to spiral into anxiety, but to strategize. Picture yourself handling each scenario with calm precision. What would a Stoic do? They wouldn't rage at the traffic. They'd use the delay to listen to a podcast or reflect. They wouldn't crumble under criticism. They'd see it as feedback to improve. This mental rehearsal strips setbacks of their emotional sting before they even happen. Modern culture often pushes toxic positivity, the idea that you should only focus on the good, suppressing anything negative. But Stoicism rejects that. It's not about ignoring reality, it's about confronting it head-on so you're never caught off guard. Think of it like a fire drill. You don't practice evacuating because you want the building to burn down. You do it so that if it ever happens, you move with clarity, not panic. So here's your challenge. Pick one obstacle you might face in the next week. Maybe it's a difficult conversation, a looming deadline, or even something as mundane as your Wi-Fi cutting out during an important call. Visualize it unfolding, then mentally walk through your Stoic response, focusing only on what you can control. By doing this, you're not inviting disaster, you're disarming it. As Seneca wrote, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." That's the essence of this practice, turning fear into foresight and setbacks into stepping stones. Imagine looking at every twist and turn in your life, every rejection, every failure, every unexpected detour, and saying with absolute sincerity, "This is exactly what I needed." That's the essence of Amor Fati, a Stoic concept so powerful that Friedrich Nietzsche later adopted it as his own. Translated from Latin, it means love of fate, not just accepting what happens, but embracing it as if you'd chosen it yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, "The obstacle is the way," a phrase that captures this mindset perfectly. He didn't just tolerate the hardships of ruling Rome during war and plague. He saw them as the very material he needed to grow stronger. Here's why this matters for you right now. Think about a career setback. Maybe you were passed over for a promotion or even laid off. In the moment, it feels like a disaster. But what if that rejection forced you to start the business you'd been too afraid to launch? Or what if that layoff led you to a field you'd never considered but now love? Amor Fati flips the script. Instead of resisting reality, you ask, how could this be the perfect teacher for me? The Stoics believed that fate weaves a tapestry far larger than our limited perspective can see. What looks like a snag in the thread might be the very knot that holds everything together. Try this exercise today. Pick one recent setback, a missed opportunity, a conflict, even a minor inconvenience like a cancelled plan. Now reframe it out loud. This happened for me, not to me. If your flight was delayed, maybe it gave you time to finish that book you'd been neglecting. If a project fell through, perhaps it freed you for something better aligned with your purpose. This isn't naive optimism. it's strategic resilience. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, the impediment to action advances action. In other words, the barriers life throws in your path aren't roadblocks, they're the path. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies on post-traumatic growth show that people who find meaning in adversity don't just recover, they thrive. Think of J.K. Rowling, who framed her early poverty as the fuel for her creativity, or athletes who use injuries as a chance to hone mental toughness. Amor Fati isn't about pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about trusting that even the sting has a purpose. So next time life throws you a curveball, don't just endure it, thank it, because the setbacks you're facing today might be the foundation of the strength you'll need tomorrow. We live in a world that constantly pushes us to want more, the newest phone, the bigger house, the next promotion. But what if the key to contentment isn't gaining more, but deeply appreciating what you already have? This is where the Stoic practice of negative visualization becomes transformative. Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius, put it starkly, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" He wasn't advocating self-punishment. He was teaching a radical exercise in gratitude by temporarily stripping away comforts to reveal their true value. Here's how it works. Close your eyes and picture waking up tomorrow to find your most cherished possession gone. Maybe it's your laptop, your favorite jacket, or even your home. Sit with that feeling, the initial panic, the hollow ache of loss. Now open your eyes. That item is still here, but something has shifted. You're suddenly aware of how much it means to you. This is negative visualization in action. The Stoics didn't dwell on loss to breed fear. They did it to break the trance of taking things for granted. Imagine applying this to relationships. What if you visualized a day without your partner's laugh, your child's messy artwork on the fridge, or your best friend's advice? The ordinary becomes extraordinary when you see it through the lens of potential loss. Modern society thrives on the opposite, distracting us from appreciating what we have by dangling the next shiny object. Social media bombards us with curated highlight reels, fueling comparison and dissatisfaction. But Stoicism offers an antidote. When Seneca wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand," he wasn't just talking about hardships. He was revealing a truth about joy. We only recognize its full depth when we confront its fragility. Think of a musician who loses their hearing, or an athlete sidelined by injury. Often, it's only in absence that they and we truly grasp the gift of what was. Your challenge today: spend 2 minutes imagining life without one routine comfort. Maybe it's your morning coffee, the ability to text a loved one, or even the chair you're sitting on right now. Notice the subtle shift in how you perceive it afterward. This practice isn't about guilt, it's about awakening to the abundance already surrounding you. As Seneca reminded us, it is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who craves more. By regularly confronting loss in your mind, you inoculate yourself against entitlement and cultivate a gratitude so fierce it transforms ordinary moments into gifts. That's the power of negative visualization. It doesn't just prepare you for hardship, it teaches you to savor the now. There's a reason why the ancient Stoics didn't just talk about resilience, they actively trained for it, like athletes preparing for a championship. Take Cato the Younger, a Roman senator who became legendary for his unshakable character. He didn't wait for life to test him, he created his own challenges. On stormy nights, he'd walk barefoot through the streets of Rome in nothing but a thin tunic. He'd eat plain meals on the floor instead of at his lavish table. To most, this looked like pointless suffering, but Cato knew better. He was conditioning his mind to handle anything so that when real hardship came, he'd meet it with calm mastery. This is the essence of voluntary discomfort, the fifth Stoic technique, deliberately stepping into small struggles to inoculate yourself against life's larger blows. You might recognize echoes of this in modern trends: cold showers, intermittent fasting, or digital detoxes. But here's the critical distinction. Stoicism isn't about punishing yourself or chasing suffering for its own sake. It's about proving to yourself that comfort is optional, not essential. Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming a philosopher, put it bluntly: difficulty shows what men are. In other words, your true character isn't revealed when life is easy, but when you choose to make it temporarily harder. Start small. Try walking to work without headphones, letting the silence sharpen your focus instead of drowning it out with distraction. Skip the snooze button tomorrow and rise immediately, even if it feels jarring. These tiny acts of discipline rewire your relationship with discomfort. They teach you that unease isn't an emergency, just a signal to recalibrate. Modern research supports this. Studies on stress inoculation show that controlled exposure to challenges, whether physical, like cold exposure, or mental, like delayed gratification, builds greater emotional resilience over time. The goal isn't to romanticize hardship, but to strip it of its power over you. When Cotto faced political persecution and eventual suicide, he met it with the same steady resolve he'd cultivated in those self-imposed trials. That's the ultimate lesson. By voluntarily embracing minor discomforts today, you're preparing yourself to face inevitable crises tomorrow, not with panic, but with the quiet confidence of someone who's already walked through fire. So ask yourself, what's one comfort you can relinquish this week, not to suffer, but to strengthen? Because the Stoics knew something timeless. The person who chooses their struggles will never be overwhelmed by the ones they didn't see coming. Marcus Aurelius never intended for his journal to become one of history's most revered books. The meditations we study today were just private notes, scribbles of a Roman emperor wrestling with fatigue, betrayal, and the weight of leadership. That's the paradox. His most powerful tool for resilience wasn't some grand strategy, but the simple act of putting pen to paper. Stoic journaling isn't about crafting perfect prose. It's about creating a mirror for your mind, a space to untangle chaos with three ruthless questions. What challenged me today? How did I respond? And what was truly within my control? Start with the small stuff. Maybe your coffee spilled this morning, or a colleague took credit for your idea in a meeting. Instead of letting that irritation simmer, open your journal and dissect it like a Stoic. First, name the challenge plainly. The barista handed me a leaking cup and I snapped at her. Next, examine your reaction. I let frustration dictate my tone, which solved nothing. Finally, isolate what you controlled. I could have asked for a new cup politely, or simply wiped the spill myself. This isn't self-criticism, it's calibration. The Stoics called this hyponemata, or reminders, a way to spot patterns in your reactions so you can refine them. Modern research backs this practice. Studies show that expressive writing reduces stress and improves problem solving by creating psychological distance from emotions. But the Stoics took it further. Their journals were training logs for the mind. Epictetus, who taught that we are disturbed not by events, but by our judgments about them, used writing to separate facts from interpretations. When you journal this way, you're not just venting, you're reprogramming your instincts. Here's your 3-prompt template for tonight. 1. What tested my patience today? Be specific. Was it a cancelled flight, a rude comment, or your own procrastination? 2. Did I meet that challenge with wisdom or weakness? No sugarcoating. 3. Where did I waste energy on things beyond my control? This final question is the game changer. you'll start noticing how much mental real estate you surrender to things like weather, traffic, or other people's moods. The magic happens when you review these entries weekly. You'll see progress in places you didn't expect. Maybe last month you raged over a delayed package, but today you shrugged off a missed deadline. That's growth. Marcus didn't write to impress posterity. He wrote to hold himself accountable. Your journal is the same, a private dojo where you train your mind to respond, not react. So grab any notebook and start tonight, because the page doesn't judge, it only reflects. And sometimes that reflection reveals the Stoic you're becoming. Picture yourself floating in space, gazing down at Earth, a pale blue dot suspended in darkness. From this vantage point, the traffic jam that ruined your morning, the harsh email from your boss, even the financial stress gnawing at you, all shrink into near invisibility. This is the view from above, the seventh Stoic technique that Marcus Aurelius used to cut problems down to size. He'd write in his journal about the fleeting nature of human affairs, reminding himself that even the grandest empires eventually turn to dust. Think of the substance of the whole, he wrote, and how small your share of it. That's not pessimism, it's liberation. When you zoom out far enough, most of what consumes us daily isn't just small, it's temporary. Modern psychology echoes this ancient wisdom. Therapists often use the 5-year test, asking clients, will this still matter half a decade from now? It's striking how rarely the answer is yes. The promotion you didn't get, the argument that kept you up last night, even the rejection that stung, they rarely stand the test of time. The Stoics took this further by visualizing literal cosmic scales. Imagine your current crisis as a single grain of sand on a beach stretching for millennia. That shift in perspective doesn't erase pain, but it does put it in its proper place. Here's how to practice this today. Close your eyes and picture Earth from orbit, no borders, no noise, just quiet majesty. Now mentally drop a pin on your location. See your home, your workplace, the cafe where you spilled coffee this morning. From here, how significant are those moments? This exercise isn't about dismissing your struggles. It's about realizing they exist within a vast tapestry. Astronauts often report the overview effect, a profound shift in awareness after seeing Earth from space. They describe borders vanishing, conflicts seeming petty, and a deep sense of connection. You don't need a rocket ship to access this. Marcus, writing in a military tent 2,000 years ago, achieved the same clarity through sheer mental discipline. Try pairing this with a simple question whenever stress mounts. Is this a chapter in my life, or just a sentence? Most of what we agonize over falls into the latter category. The Stoics didn't ignore problems, they just refused to let them distort their sense of scale. Wars, plagues, betrayals, Marcus faced them all while keeping this cosmic view. Your challenges may feel all-consuming today, but remember, you're standing on a rock hurtling through space at 67,000 miles per hour. Whatever's weighing on you now will, like everything else, eventually become stardust. That's the power of the view from above. It doesn't solve your problems, but it sure makes them easier to carry. History remembers Nelson Mandela not for his 27 years in prison, but for what he did with them. While confined to a tiny cell on Robben Island, he turned his obstacle into an education studying law, mentoring fellow prisoners, and honing the patience that would later dismantle apartheid. That's the heart of the 8th Stoic technique. The obstacle isn't just something to overcome, it's the raw material for your transformation. Ryan Holiday captured this perfectly in his book The Obstacle is the Way, a modern revival of Marcus Aurelius' ancient insight. The Stoics didn't see setbacks as detours, they saw them as the main road. Take James Dyson, the inventor of the bagless vacuum. Before his breakthrough, he built 5,126 prototypes that failed. Most people would have quit after a dozen, but Dyson, he framed each failure as data, tweaking his design until the flaws became features. Or consider Oprah Winfrey, fired from her first TV job for being too emotionally invested in stories, a trait that later defined her empire. These aren't just comeback stories, they're masterclasses in Stoic alchemy, turning leaden setbacks into golden opportunities. Here's the critical shift: instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this teaching me?" A startup founder whose product flops could either wallow or realize the market needed something entirely different. A writer facing rejection after rejection might discover their voice was meant for a different genre. Even on a smaller scale, a missed train becomes unexpected reading time. A broken laptop forces a digital detox. The obstacle isn't the enemy, it's the compass pointing you toward growth you didn't know you needed. Your challenge today: pick one current struggle, a strained relationship, a work project gone sideways, even a persistent bad habit. Now dissect it for hidden lessons. Is that conflict revealing a boundary you need to set? Is that failed project highlighting a skill gap you've ignored? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." Translation: the very thing blocking your path might be the push you needed to find a better one. Mandela didn't choose prison, but he chose how to use it. You might not choose your obstacles either, but you can choose to let them sculpt you into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient than you'd have become without them. That's the Stoic secret. The way forward isn't around the obstacle, it's straight through it. Death is the one guest we all know is coming, yet spend our lives pretending won't arrive. The Stoics shattered this illusion with Memento Mori, Latin for "remember you must die." But here's the twist: this wasn't about morbidity. Seneca wrote, "Life is long if you know how to use it," revealing the true purpose of Mortality Reminders, not to paralyze you with fear, but to ignite you with urgency. Imagine an hourglass with sand slipping relentlessly. The Stoics didn't watch it with dread. They used it as a gauge to ask, "Am I spending these grains on what truly matters?" Modern culture treats death like a glitch, something to be avoided in conversation, delayed with anti-aging creams, or numbed with endless distractions. Compare that to the ancient Romans, who kept skulls at banquet tables as literal party favors, not to kill the mood but to enhance it. The message was clear: this feast, this laughter, this connection, it's precious precisely because it's fleeting. Steve Jobs echoed this 2,000 years later when he said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." Here's your challenge: grab paper and write 2 lists. First, how I spent last year. Be brutally honest how many hours vanished into social media scrolls, half-hearted commitments, or worry over things that never happened. Now the second list: if this were my last year, not a bucket list of skydiving and travel, but the essence of how you'd want your days to feel. More evenings with loved ones. Fewer apologies for setting boundaries, creative work that outlives you. The gap between these lists isn't guilt, it's a compass. The Stoics practiced this daily. Marcus Aurelius woke up asking, "Will this be what I'd want to be doing if today were my last?" Not to rush through life, but to savor the right parts. Think of it like editing a film, cutting the filler scenes so the story tightens into something meaningful. Mortality Reminders strip away the trivial and force a reckoning. If time isn't guaranteed, and it isn't, why am I waiting to live? So tonight, as you turn off the lights, ask Seneca's question: what have I truly lost by not knowing my expiration date? The answer might surprise you. Without death's deadline, we drift, but with it, every moment sharpens into focus, not as a countdown, but as a choice. That's the paradox of Memento Mori. remembering you'll die is the surest way to start truly living. Imagine you cut your finger. Instantly, your entire body rallies to protect the wound, blood clots to seal it. White cells swarm to fight infection. Even your other hand moves to guard it. That's sympathy in action, the 10th Stoic technique that reveals a profound truth. Just as your body is a single organism, humanity is one interconnected whole. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What injures the hive injures the bee." He didn't just mean this poetically. He governed an empire with this mindset, seeing riots in distant provinces not as someone else's problem, but as pain in his own collective body. This principle flips modern individualism on its head. Think about rejection. Maybe you didn't get that job you wanted. At first, it feels isolating. But what if that very rejection created an opening for someone else whose family depended on it? Or led you to a role where your skills helped a team thrive in ways you couldn't have predicted? Sympathy teaches that no setback exists in a vacuum. When one door closes, it's often because unseen forces are redirecting you not away from success, but toward your rightful place in a larger ecosystem. History brims with examples. Thomas Edison's lab burned to the ground in 1914, destroying years of work. Reporters asked how he'd recover. His response, "I'm 67, but I'll start fresh tomorrow." Why? Because he understood that his setback wasn't just his, it was a chance to model resilience for his team and inspire future inventors. Even nature operates this way. Forest fires that seem destructive actually clear space for new growth, benefiting the entire ecosystem. Your challenge today is twofold. First, identify a recent disappointment. Now, trace its ripple effects. Did losing that client free you to mentor a junior colleague? Did that failed relationship teach you compassion you now extend to others? Second, ask, who around me is struggling in ways that mirror my own? Sympathy isn't just about receiving support, it's about recognizing that your hardest moments equip you to lift others. Marcus wrote, "We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes." When you view your obstacles as part of a collective journey, they transform from personal wounds into shared strength. That's the alchemy of Stoic connection. Your pain becomes the thread that weaves you more deeply into the human tapestry. There's a dangerous misconception about Stoicism, that it teaches you to stop caring altogether. Nothing could be further from the truth. When Epictetus talked about practicing indifference, he wasn't advocating emotional numbness. He was drawing a razor-sharp distinction between what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It's not things that disturb us, he said, but our judgments about things. Take reputation, for example. The Stoics called it an indifferent, not because it doesn't matter at all, but because it's ultimately beyond your control. You could be the kindest, most competent person in the room, and someone might still misinterpret your actions or spread rumors. Obsessing over that is like trying to control the wind. It's exhausting and utterly futile. Fast forward to today, and this principle hits even harder. Social media has turned validation into a commodity. Likes, shares, follower counts flashing like slot machine payouts. But here's the Stoic truth. Those metrics are as unreliable as weather patterns. A post you poured your heart into might flop, while some offhand comment goes viral. The solution isn't to quit creating. It's to create from a place of purpose, then release your work like a leaf into a river without clinging to how far it travels. This isn't just philosophical, it's practical liberation. Think of Serena Williams stepping onto the court. She doesn't play to the crowd's cheers or boos, she plays her game. Or consider the researcher who publishes groundbreaking work that's initially mocked, like Barry Marshall proving ulcers were caused by bacteria, an idea so ridiculed he drank a Petri dish of the bacteria to prove it. Both examples reveal the power of strategic indifference. focusing on excellence while remaining unattached to external noise. Here's how to put this into action. Grab a notebook and list 3 things you'll consciously deprioritize this week. Maybe it's checking Instagram likes, ruminating over a colleague's passing comment, or fretting about whether your outfit impresses strangers. Next to each, write why it's not yours to control. Then, beneath that, note what you will focus on instead: the quality of your work, the depth of your conversations, the integrity of your efforts. This simple act shifts your energy from chasing approval to cultivating character. The Stoics weren't saying nothing matters. They were saying everything matters, but not equally. Your attention is currency. Spend it where it yields growth, not where it's wasted on the uncontrollable. As Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That's the heart of indifference, not caring less but caring wisely. When you master this, you stop being a puppet to externals and start becoming the author of your own resilience. Every interaction, every notification, every unexpected event, they all come knocking at the door of your mind like uninvited guests. Here's the problem. Most of us fling that door open without a second thought, letting whatever barges in dictate our next move. Epictetus called this the moment of assent, that critical split second where you either surrender to your first impression or choose to question it. He pictured the mind as a fortress with a gatekeeper whose job isn't to block entry, but to pause and ask, is this visitor worth admitting? Modern psychology echoes this with the response versus reaction distinction. A reaction is raw and immediate, like firing off an angry email. A response, that's what happens when you've let the gatekeeper do their job. Consider how often we get hijacked by first impressions. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instantly your pulse races. Your grip tightens on the wheel. You've already labeled them a jerk. But what if you hit pause for just 10 seconds? Maybe that driver is rushing to the hospital. Maybe they didn't see you. Or maybe they are a jerk, but your anger won't reform them. The discipline of assent isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about creating space between stimulus and action, like a buffer zone for your sanity. Studies on emotional regulation show this gap is where wisdom lies. MRI scans reveal that when we delay reacting, the prefrontal cortex, the brain's rational CEO, gets a chance to override the amygdala's panic signals. Let's make this practical. For the next week, impose a 10-second rule before replying to any email that triggers you. Type if you must, then walk away, brew tea, stare at a wall. When you return, you'll spot the difference between what felt urgent in the heat of the moment and what actually merits your energy. Epictetus warned, don't be hijacked by impressions, because first drafts of reality are often misleading. Twitter outrage cycles thrive on this weakness. Hot takes spread faster than reasoned perspectives because they bypass the gatekeeper entirely. History's greatest negotiators, from Abraham Lincoln to Nelson Mandela, mastered this pause. Lincoln's hot letters, scathing notes he wrote to critics but never sent, were his version of the 10-second rule. Mandela, during prison negotiations, would let tense silences linger until his opponent squirmed, all because he refused to let their provocations set the tempo. The discipline of assent turns impulsiveness into intentionality. It's not passive, it's power in restraint, like a martial artist using an opponent's momentum against them. So tonight, replay one moment where you reacted without assent. Maybe it was a snapped comment to a loved one or a reflexive yes to a request you resent. Now, rewrite the scene with a pause. What changes? That tiny space is where Stoics built empires, mended relationships, and kept their peace intact while the world lost its mind. Because here's the secret, you don't control what knocks at your door, but you always control how long you wait before answering. A professional boxer doesn't fear sparring partners who hit hard, they seek them out. Why? Because every punch that lands reveals a flaw in their defense. That's the essence of turning the table, the 13th Stoic technique where critics become unwitting coaches. Marcus Aurelius had a radical approach to naysayers. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Notice he didn't say ignore them or fight back, he said learn from them. When someone attacks your work, your character, or your decisions, they're holding up a mirror to blind spots you might have missed. The question isn't whether their delivery was harsh, it's whether there's truth buried in the rubble. Consider the story of Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx. Early on, a department store buyer laughed her out of the office, saying her product idea was ridiculous. Instead of crumbling, she dissected the criticism. Were the seams truly unflattering? Could the packaging communicate the value better? That rejection became her R&D checklist. Fast forward to today, Spanx revolutionized an industry because Blakely treated criticism like free consulting. This is Stoicism in action, separating the message from the messenger's tone, mining even hostile feedback for golden nuggets of improvement. Modern workplaces often treat criticism like radioactive waste handled with gloves, avoided at all costs. But what if you flip the script when a colleague snaps, "This presentation is confusing," resist the urge to defend. Instead, probe, which part lost you? That simple pivot transforms an attacker into an ally, exposing real gaps in your clarity. Even trolls online, though their delivery is venomous, sometimes highlight legitimate concerns. A YouTube creator might rage at a comment calling their video shallow, but the wise response isn't to clap back, it's to ask, did I skim over complexities that needed depth? Here's your challenge this week. Think of someone who recently challenged you, a boss's sharp critique, a friend's blunt observation, even an internet stranger's barb. Write them a thank you note, not for their tone but for the growth their words sparked. Maybe that snide remark about your public speaking pushed you to join Toastmasters. Perhaps that rejection letter forced you to refine your proposal into something extraordinary. Marcus Aurelius kept a mental Rolodex of people who'd wronged him, not to stew but to thank, because each one had sanded down his rough edges. The Stoics knew this secret. Your critics are the whetstone to your blade. They don't dull you, they sharpen you, if you've got the courage to lean into the friction. So next time someone takes a swing at you, don't block or retaliate. Step closer. Ask what they see that you don't, because the harshest feedback often carries the purest gold, if you're brave enough to pan for it. Seneca once wrote a letter to his friend Lucilius that contained a bombshell of a statement. Wealth is the slave of the wise, but the master of the fool. At first glance, it sounds like a clever quip about money, but dig deeper and you'll find the 14th Stoic technique hiding in plain sight. This isn't just financial advice, it's a blueprint for mental freedom. The art of subtraction isn't about deprivation. It's about recognizing that every possession, every commitment, even every digital notification, is a tiny thread stitching you to someone else's agenda. The more you accumulate, the more you're managed by your stuff, your schedule, your endless to-dos. But here's the paradox. When you start cutting cords, you don't lose strength, you reclaim it. Take the modern myth of multitasking. We wear busyness like a badge of honor, juggling emails, meetings, and side hustles, convinced productivity means doing more. Yet studies show that task switching drains cognitive resources. It can take 23 minutes to refocus after an interruption. Now compare that to the Stoic approach. The Roman general Cincinnatus was plowing his field when he was called to lead Rome's army. He defeated the enemy in 16 days, then immediately resigned and returned to his farm. No clinging to power, no entourage, just the clarity that comes from knowing exactly what's essential. This week, try a radical experiment. Pick one distraction to eliminate, not forever, just for 7 days. Maybe it's turning off news alerts that hijack your focus with crises you can't control. Or clearing your workspace of everything except what's needed for your current project. Even something as simple as muting group chats during deep work hours. The goal isn't to create emptiness, but space for the few things that truly matter to take root and flourish. Consumerism thrives on convincing us that more equals better. But the Stoics knew better. When Diogenes lived in a barrel with nothing but a wooden cup, he saw a child drinking from his hands and promptly threw the cup away, realizing even that was excess. That's the litmus test. Does this serve my purpose, or am I serving it? Your phone isn't the problem. The endless scroll that replaces sleep is. Your commitments aren't the issue. The ones you keep out of guilt rather than conviction are. So tonight, ask yourself Seneca's question with fresh eyes. What's cluttering my resilience? Not just physical clutter, but the mental and emotional kind, the grudges you rehearse, the comparisons you can't quit, the what-ifs that play on loop. Because every unnecessary weight you drop isn't loss, it's leverage. And when you master the art of subtraction, you'll discover a truth the Stoics carved into history. The fewer things that can shake you, the more unshakable you become. Picture an Olympic sprinter steps away from the finish line when a rival stumbles. Instead of seizing victory, they stop to help their competitor cross first. That moment where integrity trumps triumph is the heart of Stoic virtue in action. Epictetus, the philosopher born into slavery, put it bluntly: in the long run, every man will pay the penalty for his own misdeeds. Until then, the only true loss is compromising your character for an outcome. This is Technique 15, Character over Outcome, the Stoic conviction that who you become in pursuit of a goal matters far more than whether you achieve it. Modern culture obsesses over metrics, sales numbers, test scores, social media stats as if they define worth. But the Stoics measured success differently. Imagine two salespeople. One clinches a deal by exaggerating product capabilities, while another loses the contract by refusing to mislead. Who truly won? Or consider historical figures like Socrates, who chose death over betraying his principles. His execution didn't erase his legacy, it cemented it, the Stoic twist. External failure often becomes the furnace where enduring greatness is forged. Sports offer some of the clearest examples. In the 1936 Olympics, German runner Luz Long publicly befriended Jesse Owens, his black competitor, despite Nazi orders to shun him. Long didn't win gold, but his defiance of racism outshone any medal. Fast forward to modern tennis. When a player admits the umpire missed their opponent's valid point, they sacrifice a potential advantage for something rarer: self-respect. These aren't feel-good stories. They're proof that character isn't just moral, it's strategic. Reputations built on integrity outlast temporary wins. Now turn the lens inward. Recall a recent disagreement. Did you listen to understand or just to rebut? When feedback stung, did you deflect or dissect it for truth? Epictetus warned, it's not what happens to you, but how you respond that reveals your philosophy. Every day presents micro-tests of character. The white lie to avoid conflict, the cutting remark disguised as humor, the silent complicity in injustice. Stoicism asks, what good is reaching the summit if you've eroded your ethics along the way? Here's your challenge today. Replay one decision where outcomes overshadowed integrity. Maybe you laughed at an offensive joke to fit in, or took credit for a colleague's idea. Now rewrite the script. How would the most principled version of you have acted? That gap isn't guilt, it's a roadmap, because the Stoics knew a secret. When you anchor yourself in virtue, setbacks can't sink you. You might lose the game, the deal, or the argument, but you'll never lose yourself. And in the end, that's the only victory that doesn't fade. You've probably set goals with absolute certainty. I will get that promotion. I will finish this project by Friday. I will finally run that marathon. But here's the problem. Life doesn't care about your deadlines. Seneca captured this perfectly with a story about boarding a ship. You can plan the route, pack supplies, even hire the best crew, but a storm might still force you to detour or dock early. Does that mean the voyage failed? Only if you expected the sea to obey you. This is Technique 16, the reserve clause, the Stoic practice of tagging every ambition with two quiet but game-changing words, fate permitting. Modern entrepreneurs understand this instinctively. Startups don't fail when they pivot. They fail when they cling to an original plan that reality has rendered obsolete. Instagram began as Bourbon, a check-in app for whiskey enthusiasts. YouTube launched as a dating site. Had those founders stubbornly stuck to their first vision, they'd have missed the far bigger opportunities staring them in the face. The reserve clause isn't about doubting yourself. It's about respecting the unpredictable currents of circumstance. When Seneca wrote, "Fate leads the willing," he wasn't advocating passivity. He was highlighting the wisdom of flexible persistence. Try this today. Take one goal you're fixated on. Maybe it's landing a specific client or hitting a rigid savings target, and rewrite it with the reserve clause. I'll close the deal by quarter's end, fate permitting. I'll run 3 times a week, barring injury or illness. Feel that subtle shift. You haven't weakened your resolve, you've armored it against disappointment. Psychologists call this mental contrasting, balancing ambition with realism, and studies show it actually increases follow-through by reducing the shock when obstacles arise. History's greatest adapters mastered this mindset. Darwin didn't board the beagle intending to revolutionize biology. He was supposed to be a clergyman. But when fate blew him toward the Galapagos, he didn't rage against the detour. He followed the evidence where it led. The reserve clause turns you into a sailor, not a bulldozer. You still chart the course, but you're ready to adjust the sails when the winds change. Because here's the secret. The people who achieve the most aren't those with the stiffest plans, but those who treat every setback as a redirect toward something they couldn't yet see. That's the power of fate permitting. It doesn't dilute your drive, it makes it unsinkable. The sun hasn't yet risen, and the world is silent except for one man sitting at his desk, pen in hand, steeling himself for the day ahead. This was Marcus Aurelius' sacred ritual, writing his morning meditations by candlelight before the chaos of ruling an empire claimed his attention. When you arise in the morning, he scribbled, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. These weren't fluffy affirmations, they were mental armor. Fast forward 2,000 years, and modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics knew instinctively. How you start and end your day shapes your resilience more than you realize. Morning rituals in Stoicism aren't about productivity hacks or bullet journals, they're about grounding your mind before the storm hits. Think of it like a warrior strapping on armor. You wouldn't wait until the battle begins to search for your sword. Marcus' template was simple yet profound. First, anticipate challenges, not to dread them, but to prepare. Today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, he wrote, stripping setbacks of their power to shock. Second, reaffirm virtues, reminding himself that no external event could force him to act against his principles. Third, visualize the bigger picture, remembering that today's irritations are but specks in the cosmic timeline. Now contrast this with how most of us start our days, jolted awake by alarms, immediately checking emails, diving into reactive mode before our brains have fully booted up. The difference, like a ship setting sail without plotting its course, we surrender our day to whatever waves crash against us first. Enter Seneca's counterpart, the evening audit. Where mornings are for intention, nights are for honest reflection. What evils have you cured today? Seneca asked his friend Lucilius. What weaknesses resisted? Where did you even slightly stray from your ideals? This wasn't self-flagellation. It was a SURGEONS Chinese letter assessment. Picture a CEO reviewing a board meeting where they lost their temper. A Stoic wouldn't just brood over the outburst, they'd dissect it. Was my anger justified? Did I control what I could? How will I respond differently next time? Modern research validates this ancient practice. Studies on effective forecasting show we're terrible at predicting how events will impact us, but nightly reflection sharpens that foresight. Harvard researchers found that just 15 minutes of journaling at day's end boosts problem-solving clarity by 23%. The key is specificity. Instead of vague, "Today was stressful," ask, "When did I feel most off balance? What triggered it? What part was within my control?" Here's your actionable template. Mornings, spend 5 minutes writing 3 lines, one challenge you might face, one virtue to embody, and one reminder of life's fleeting beauty. Evenings, answer 3 questions. What did I do well? Where did I fall short? What's one small improvement for tomorrow? Keep it brutally concise. The Roman general Scipio Africanus used this very method. His journals were famously brief, yet they guided him to victories that changed history. The magic lies in the pairing. Morning rituals set your compass. Evening reviews check your coordinates. Miss one, and you risk drifting. Together, they create a feedback loop that sharpens judgment and builds what the Stoics called prosach attention to the present moment. Because here's the truth no productivity guru will tell you. Discipline isn't about willpower. It's about designing systems that make virtue inevitable. And few systems are as time-tested as beginning and ending your day like a Stoic prepared, accountable, and relentlessly focused on what truly matters. Imagine standing at the edge of an hourglass, watching grains of sand slip relentlessly through the narrow passage. Now picture this. The average person will spend 5 years and 4 months of their life on social media. That's longer than it took to build the Great Pyramid of Giza. Seneca saw this coming 2,000 years ago when he wrote on the shortness of life, a scathing indictment of how we squander our most finite resource, time. It is not that we have a short time to live, he argued, but that we waste much of it. The real tragedy, we confuse motion for progress, mistaking endless scrolling and frantic busyness for meaningful living. Consider 2 co-workers. One spends evenings binge-watching shows they won't remember next week, mornings lost in Instagram comparisons, and weekends recovering from exhaustion. The other dedicates 30 minutes daily to learning Spanish, takes piano lessons on Wednesdays, and spends Sundays hiking with her daughter. Both have the same 24 hours, but one is trading time for growth, while the other is leaking it like a sieve. The Stoics weren't against leisure, they were against unconscious consumption. Seneca mocked those who treated time as disposable yet guarded their material possessions fiercely. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. Here's the wake-up call. Right now, pause and calculate how many hours you've spent this week on autopilot activities, mindless scrolling, gossip, reruns of shows you've seen a dozen times. Now multiply that by 52. The result isn't just a number, it's the unvarnished truth about what you're sacrificing. A medieval craftsman might have spent 10,000 hours mastering calligraphy. Today, we fracture that same span into fragments of distraction, then wonder why we feel unfulfilled. But there's hope. Start with a ruthless time audit. For one day, track every activity in 30-minute blocks, no judgment, just data. You'll likely spot patterns: the 20-minute social media rabbit hole after lunch, the hour lost to Netflix indecision before bed. Awareness is the first step. Next, apply Seneca's litmus test. Does this activity expand my life or just fill it? If you cut one time waster, say reducing Twitter checks from 10 to 3 times daily, you'll reclaim roughly 23 hours a month. That's enough to read War and Peace, train for a 5K, or finally launch that side project. History's most prolific creators understood this. Benjamin Franklin kept a minute-by-minute schedule, carving out time for reading, reflection, and skill building. Maya Angelou rented a sparse hotel room to write daily, stripping away distractions to focus on what mattered. They didn't have more time, they had sharper priorities. As Seneca warned, you are living as if destined to live forever. The remedy isn't panic, it's precision. Every no to trivia is a yes to something transcendent. So tonight, as you charge your phone, ask yourself, what will I power up tomorrow, my devices or my destiny? Because the sand is falling, but your hands still hold the glass. The Stoics had a secret weapon for navigating life's toughest moments, an imaginary mentor they called the sage. This wasn't some unattainable superhero, but a mental model of wisdom they could consult like an inner compass. Picture Cato the Younger, the Roman senator whose reputation for integrity was so unshakable that even his political enemies couldn't accuse him of hypocrisy. When tempted to take a shortcut, he'd ask himself, what would the sage do? Not what's easiest or what benefits me most, but what aligns with unbreakable principle. The brilliance of this technique lies in its simplicity. You don't need to be perfect to think like the wisest version of yourself. Modern psychology calls this self-distancing, stepping outside your immediate emotions to gain perspective. Studies show that people who give themselves advice in the third person, "What should Alex do here?" make better decisions than those mired in first-person angst. The Stoic sage is that same principle dressed in a toga. Think of it like having Marcus Aurelius on speed dial in your mind. When your boss dumps an unfair task on you, instead of seething silently, you channel the sage. Would the best version of me complain or find the opportunity in this? When gossip tempts you, the sage whispers, does this build character or erode it? This isn't about pretending you're flawless. Even Cato stumbled. The night before his famous suicide, a final act of defiance against Julius Caesar's tyranny, he accidentally wounded himself while reading Plato, then calmly stitched his own gash and went back to his book. The lesson: the sage isn't immune to mistakes, but they refuse to let those mistakes derail their purpose. Here's how to bring this to life today. First, sketch your personal sage traits. Maybe it's your grandmother's patience, a mentor's courage, or a historical figure's resilience like Eleanor Roosevelt or Mandela. Then, pick one friction point today, a tough conversation, a procrastinated project, and pause. Ask, if my sage were watching, what choice would make them nod in respect? The answer won't always be comfortable, but it will be clarifying. Because when you model the sage, you're not chasing perfection, you're practicing alignment. And that's where true grit is born. Marcus Aurelius never woke up wondering what the Roman tabloids would say about him. In his private journal, he scribbled a blunt reminder: you could leave life right now, let that determine what you do, say, and think. That's the essence of Technique 20, Contempt for Fame, the Stoic practice of disentangling your worth from applause, likes, or legacy. The emperor wasn't dismissing achievement. He was exposing the trap of chasing validation from people whose opinions flicker like candle flames. 2,000 years later, his words cut through influencer culture like a scalpel. How many hours are lost crafting the perfect tweet, angling for promotions to impress strangers, or rehearsing witty comebacks for imagined future eulogies? The Stoics called this the dance of the dead, living for the approval of those who aren't even here to witness it. Consider the modern obsession with virality. A TikTok might amass millions of views today and be forgotten by tomorrow. Even history's so-called immortals fade. How many of us could name 3 poets from the Augustan age without Google? Marcus put it starkly, soon you'll be ashes or bones or a name, and soon not even that. This isn't nihilism, it's liberation. When you stop performing for an audience that doesn't exist, you reclaim the only stage that matters, the integrity of your own choices. The Stoics didn't just critique fame, they diagnosed its root cause. External validation is a substitute for internal confidence. Seneca observed that people who crave constant praise are like empty vessels, rattling loudly because they lack substance. Contrast that with figures like Emily Dickinson, who wrote nearly 1,800 poems but published fewer than a dozen in her lifetime, or Nikola Tesla, who died penniless in a hotel room despite inventions that would power the modern world. Their work wasn't fueled by applause, it was driven by an irreducible need to create. Here's your challenge: for 24 hours, go on a praise fast. Don't fish for compliments, mute social media notifications, and resist the urge to casually drop achievements into conversations. Notice the anxiety that arises, the itch to be noticed, the fear of irrelevance. That discomfort is the muscle you're strengthening. Like a monk in training, you're learning to feed yourself rather than begging scraps from others' opinions. The twist: this isn't about rejecting recognition when it comes. It's about no longer needing it to breathe. When a flower blooms, it doesn't check for spectators, it fulfills its nature. That's the Stoic ideal, not indifference to admiration, but immunity to its absence, because the loudest lives often leave the faintest echoes, and the quiet ones, they ripple outward long after the noise has died. Marcus Aurelius described the mind as an inner citadel, an unassailable fortress where no external chaos could penetrate unless you lowered the drawbridge. Picture a medieval castle with towering walls. Outside, the noise of battle. Inside, a quiet courtyard where you alone decide who or what gains entry. This isn't escapism, it's the ultimate act of sovereignty. The emperor wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul," especially striking coming from a man who spent years on war-torn frontiers. His battles weren't just against invading tribes, they were against the distractions, egos, and pressures that threatened to storm his peace. Modern life bombards us with a different kind of siege: endless notifications, opinion cycles masquerading as news, the pressure to always be on. The inner citadel isn't about disconnecting from reality, it's about creating a psychological airlock. Think of it like a submarine. The ocean's crushing pressures exist, but the hull ensures survival. Meditation is the closest contemporary parallel, but Stoicism takes it further. It's not just about quieting the mind, it's about fortifying it. When a colleague's passive-aggressive email arrives or a project implodes, you don't react from the ramparts, you retreat, assess, and respond from the calm center where reason rules. Building this mental stronghold starts with a 5-minute reset ritual. First minute, sensory grounding. Close your eyes and name 3 sounds you hear. 2 physical sensations, maybe your feet on the floor, the weight of your watch, and 1 breath drawn slowly. This isn't just mindfulness, it's re-establishing that you're more than the chaos around you. Minutes 2 and 3, compartmentalize, visualize placing each stressor, a looming deadline, a family conflict into separate iron chests within your citadel. They're not gone, but they're contained, waiting for your deliberate attention rather than swarming your mind like wasps. Minute 4. Reaffirm control. Whisper Epictetus mantra. It's not what happens, but how I respond, feeling the truth of it in your bones. Final minute. Re-entry. Picture the Citadel's gates opening as you step back into the world, carrying its quiet strength with you. History's most resilient figures mastered this. Viktor Frankl, in Auschwitz, retreated to his inner citadel by imagining conversations with his wife, a mental escape no guard could confiscate. Naval Special Forces use box breathing before missions, inhaling, holding, exhaling for equal counts to access that same unshakable core. Your citadel won't stop storms, but it will ensure you never drown in them. Because here's the secret Marcus knew: the tighter you seal your borders against trivia, the more expansively you can live. Cleans, one of the great Stoic philosophers, didn't just debate ethics in lecture halls. He financed his studies by working as a water carrier, hauling heavy jugs through the streets of Athens. While other thinkers lounged in comfort, he saw physical labor as inseparable from mental discipline. Exercise strengthens the mind as well as the body, he wrote, a radical idea in an era that often dismissed manual work as beneath intellectuals. Fast forward to today, and science confirms what Cleans knew instinctively. Lifting weights builds more than muscle, it forges resilience that spills into every aspect of life. The 20-second Stoic technique reveals a truth modern fitness culture often misses. Your workout isn't just about burning calories, it's a training ground for your character. Consider Navy SEAL training, where candidates endure grueling physical trials not to test athleticism, but to expose mental weak points. When your legs scream to quit during a 5-mile run, that moment mirrors life's larger battles. The job interview where you're out of your depth, the project that demands late nights, the illness that requires relentless patience. The Stoics didn't have CrossFit or marathon training, but they understood the principle. Voluntary hardship inoculates you against involuntary suffering. Epictetus, who praised Clean's labor, put it bluntly: difficulty shows what men are. In other words, your true self emerges not when the path is easy, but when you're drenched in sweat and digging deeper than you thought possible. Modern fitness trends often prioritize distraction, blasting playlists, flashing screens on treadmills, podcasts drowning out discomfort. But here's the Stoic challenge: try one workout this week in silence. No music, no podcasts, just you and the weight, the road, or the yoga mat. Notice how your mind rebels: the boredom, the urge to check your phone, the amplified awareness of fatigue. That resistance is the point. Like a monk sitting in meditation observing restless thoughts, you're learning to sit with physical discomfort without escape routes. When ultramarathoner David Goggins runs hundreds of miles alone, he calls it calling-gousing the mind, facing the raw, unfiltered version of yourself that distractions usually mask. History's toughest minds paired philosophy with physicality. Theodore Roosevelt, sickly as a child, transformed himself through brutal outdoor regimens, later crediting his stamina for surviving political betrayals and Amazonian expeditions. The Roman gladiator turned philosopher Epictetus, yes, the same one, taught that the body is the mind's first classroom. You are a little soul carrying around a corpse. Not to demean the body, but to master it. When you push through a final set of squats despite trembling legs, you're rehearsing for life's bigger moments, the times when grit matters more than talent. Your mission today: convert exercise from a chore into a Stoic lab. Next time you're at the gym or on a run, drop the entertainment and tune into your body's signals. When the urge to quit surfaces, interrogate it. Is this pain or just discomfort? Am I truly at my limit, or can I endure 5 more seconds? Like cleans hauling water, you're not just building strength, you're proving to yourself that you can bear more than you think. And that lesson doesn't stay on the treadmill. It follows you into boardrooms, hospital waiting rooms, and all the unseen battles where resilience decides who bends and who breaks. The Stoics didn't train for six-pack abs, they trained for unshakable will, and now so can you. Seneca called anger a brief madness, a fire that burns brightest in the moment it does the most damage. In his piercing essay on anger, he describes a Roman emperor so consumed by rage that he ordered an entire lake whipped for drowning his favorite fish. Absurd, absolutely, but strip away the ancient context and you'll recognize the same irrational spark in the email drafted at midnight, the door slammed after an argument, or the social media rant deleted too late. Technique 23 isn't about eliminating anger. It's about installing a firebreak between the spark and the inferno. Seneca's remedy was disarmingly simple: count. Not to 10, but to the point where reason overtakes adrenaline. The greatest cure for anger, he wrote, is delay. History's most disciplined minds weaponized this pause. Abraham Lincoln wrote scathing letters to generals who botched battles, then tucked them away unsent. Eleanor Roosevelt kept a gripe book where she vented private frustrations before responding publicly. The common thread: they understood anger's seductive lie, that reacting fast proves strength, when in truth, restraint is the ultimate power move. Modern neuroscience confirms this. Brain scans show the amygdala, the threat detection alarm, activates within milliseconds of provocation, while the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought, takes a full 6 seconds to engage. That gap is where Stoic counting works its magic. Try this today. Next time your pulse spikes, maybe a coworker takes credit for your idea, or your teenager rolls their eyes freeze. Literally count your breaths, slow and audible. 1. Recognize the heat rising. 2. Ask, will this matter in a week? 3. Picture the angriest version of yourself. Is that who you want negotiating? By 4, the spell often breaks. The key isn't suppressing emotion. It's refusing to let emotion dictate terms. For a real-world test, open your drafts folder right now. Find that unsent message bristling with indignation. Read it aloud. Does it still feel necessary, or has time revealed it as a temporary explosion? Seneca's student Nero never learned this lesson. His unchecked rage cost him an empire. But you have the advantage of hindsight and neuroscience. So tonight, reflect. What burned me last week that now feels like ash? The answer might just save you from the next blaze. Imagine 2 circles drawn on a page. The outer one is vast and chaotic, filled with everything that grabs your attention but lies beyond your control. Stock market crashes, weather patterns, other people's choices. The inner circle is smaller but dense with power. Your effort, your attitude, your next move. This is the Stoic adaptation of Stephen Covey's circle of influence. And it's not just a diagram, it's a battle plan for reclaiming your mental real estate. Epictetus framed it as a question: is this within my power? If not, it doesn't belong in the inner circle. The mistake most of us make: we spend our energy like amateur gardeners, frantically watering rocks while the plants wither. Take modern activism as an example. You can rage endlessly about systemic injustice on social media, outer circle, or you can mentor one underprivileged student, vote in local elections, or support ethical businesses, inner circle. Both approaches aim for change, but one burns you out, the other builds tangible momentum. The Stoics weren't passive, they were precision-focused. Marcus Aurelius didn't waste time lamenting corrupt senators. He governed with integrity where he could. Seneca didn't curse Rome's decadence. He wrote letters to guide individuals toward wisdom. Here's the exercise that will change your focus. grab paper and draw those 2 circles right now. In the outer ring, list 5 things consuming your mental space but outside your control, maybe a family member's health, a boss's favoritism, or even the outcome of a sports game. Now, the inner circle, 5 things you can influence your preparation for that meeting, the tone you use with your kids tonight, the book you choose to read. The shift happens when you physically see where your energy actually belongs. The magic lies in the pivot. For every outer circle item, ask, is there even 1% of this I can impact? A loved one's illness might be beyond your control, but you can research treatments or simply sit with them in silence. A recession may loom, but you can upskill or tighten your budget. This isn't about ignoring the outer circle. It's about redirecting your focus to the intersection where concern meets agency. Naval Ravikant, the philosopher-entrepreneur, practices this rigorously. Give me 10 years and I'll move the world. But today, I'll move what's mine to move. History's most effective change-makers mastered this balance. When Lincoln took office, he faced a fracturing nation. He couldn't single-handedly abolish slavery or prevent war overnight, but he could draft the Emancipation Proclamation, appoint bold generals, and deliver speeches that reshaped public sentiment. Each act was a stone placed deliberately in his inner circle, creating ripples no outer circle chaos could erase. Tonight, try this ritual. Review your day and categorize 3 moments. Where did you pour energy into the outer circle, like shouting at traffic? And where did you invest in the inner circle, like choosing patience during a conflict? The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness, because here's the secret the Stoics knew. Your influence isn't small, it's just concentrated. And like a laser beam, focused energy cuts through noise to create lasting change. The outer circle will always be there, loud and demanding. But your power lies in the quiet space within, where every intentional action compounds into unshakable resilience. Epictetus once told his students, difficulties reveal what men are, not as a warning, but as an invitation to see every setback as a carefully crafted exam, designed to reveal strengths they didn't know they possessed. This is Technique 25, the Stoic Test, where life's hardest moments aren't misfortunes but meticulously placed hurdles in your personal obstacle course. Think of it like this: when a personal trainer increases the weight, they're not punishing you, they're proving your muscles are ready for the next level. The Stoics took this further, framing adversity as the universe's way of asking, how badly do you want to grow? Consider Sarah Blakely again, the Spanx founder who faced rejection after rejection. Each no wasn't just a closed door, it was a pop quiz. Can you refine your pitch? Will you double down or retreat? When she finally got her yes, it wasn't luck, it was the cumulative grade of all those unseen tests. Or take James Dyson's 5,000 failed prototypes. Most see a string of disasters. Stoics see a professor grading each attempt. Good effort, but revise your approach. Try again. Here's how to apply this today. When a challenge lands in your lap, a missed promotion, a financial pinch, even a heated argument, pause and ask, what's being tested here? Is it your adaptability, like a software developer whose project gets scrapped, forcing them to learn a new coding language? Your patience, like a parent navigating a toddler's meltdown at the grocery store? Or your integrity, like a whistleblower risking their career to expose wrongdoing? The moment you reframe a problem as an exam, it transforms from something happening to you into something happening for you. Modern psychology backs this. Studies on stress-related growth show that people who view hardships as challenges, not threats, experience less anxiety and higher performance. Navy SEAL endure hell week not to break them, but to show them their capacity for resilience. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, The obstacle is the way, because he knew barriers weren't roadblocks, they were the curriculum. Tonight, replay one recent struggle through this lens. That flat tire wasn't just bad luck, it tested your composure under pressure, the botched presentation, a chance to refine your communication skills. Even heartbreak, brutal as it is, examines your capacity to love without losing yourself. The Stoics didn't avoid these tests, they leaned in, knowing each one was a receipt of progress. So next time life hands you a pop quiz, don't panic, breathe, sharpen your pencil, and remember, you wouldn't be facing this if you weren't already strong enough to pass. Think of a river carving through stone, not through brute force, but by persistent, unrelenting motion. Drop by drop, day after day, it reshapes the landscape without fanfare. That's the essence of these 26 Stoic techniques. Mastery isn't about grand gestures, it's the quiet accumulation of small, disciplined choices. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly with his river metaphor. What stands in the way becomes the way. Each obstacle you meet, whether it's a frustrating coworker, a financial setback, or your own self-doubt, isn't a roadblock. It's the current that polishes you, smoothing rough edges into resilience. Consider how these practices build upon each other. The dichotomy of control teaches you where to direct your energy. Negative visualization deepens your gratitude. Voluntary discomfort hardens your resolve. Amor Fati turns setbacks into fuel. Alone, each technique is powerful, but together, they form an unbreakable chainmail for the mind. Think of James Stockdale, the Navy pilot who survived 7 years as a POW by applying Stoic principles daily. He didn't have a master plan for endurance, he had a toolkit. Some days he leaned on Premeditatio Malorum, mentally rehearsing torture to strip it of shock value. Other moments, he clung to the view from above, remembering his suffering was a speck in cosmic time. His survival wasn't a single act of heroism, it was the compound interest of practiced discipline. Here's the truth about mastery: you won't apply all 26 techniques perfectly. Neither did the Stoics. Marcus' journals reveal a man constantly reminding himself of principles he'd forgotten in the heat of the moment. Progress is cyclical, not linear. You'll lose your temper, then recalibrate with the discipline of Assent. You'll obsess over trivialities, then recenter with the inner citadel. What matters isn't flawless execution, it's returning to the tools again and again, like a musician practicing scales. Your final challenge: pick one technique to implement today. Not all 26 are just one. Maybe it's morning journaling to set your intentions, or the 10-second rule before reacting to a trigger. Perhaps it's negative visualization tonight as you tuck into bed, contemplating the fragility of your comforts. Whatever you choose, commit to it for 7 days. Watch how this single practice begins to ripple outward, how pausing before anger shifts conversations, or how reflecting on mortality clarifies priorities. The river doesn't rush, it persists, and so must you, because the goal isn't to conquer Stoicism, it's to let Stoicism conquer you, drop by drop, until what once required effort becomes second nature. That's when you'll realize the techniques weren't changing your life, you were. Now, go meet the current. 26 techniques might sound like a lot until you realize they're not a checklist but a compass. Seneca once scoffed at those who claimed life was too short, arguing it only feels that way because we leak time on distractions. But here's the twist: mastering these Stoic practices doesn't add more hours to your day, it multiplies the impact of each one. Think of it like upgrading from a rowboat to a sailboat. You're still navigating the same waters, but now you're harnessing winds you once fought against. Every rejection becomes a lesson in the dichotomy of control. Every frustration turns into a chance to practice the discipline of Assent. Even grief, when met with Amor Fati, transforms from a weight that crushes into a current that carries you forward. Consider the power of compounding these tools. Negative visualization sharpens your gratitude, which fuels your resilience, which makes voluntary discomfort easier to embrace, each technique reinforcing the next like interlocking gears. James Stockdale, the POW who credited Stoicism for his survival, didn't just rely on one tactic. Some days he clung to Premeditatio Malorum, anticipating torture to strip it of its terror. Other moments he leaned on the view from above, remembering his suffering was a speck in cosmic time. His endurance wasn't a single act of willpower, it was the sum of practiced disciplines, each one a lifeline when others frayed. This isn't about perfection. Marcus Aurelius' private journals reveal a man constantly reminding himself of principles he'd forgotten in the heat of anger or fatigue. Progress is cyclical, not linear. You'll lose your temper, then recalibrate. You'll obsess over trivialities, then recenter. What matters is returning to the tools, not because you failed, but because the practice itself is the transformation. Like a blacksmith tempering steel, each setback you meet with these techniques doesn't just test your strength, it forges it. So here's your invitation. Bookmark this video not for when life is easy, for when it isn't. The next time you're staring down a setback, revisit just one technique. Maybe it's the reserve clause whispering, fate permitting, to soften rigid expectations. Or Sympathy, reminding you that your struggle connects you to a larger human tapestry. Share in the comments which tool resonated most, because the Stoics' new wisdom grows when shared. And as Marcus Aurelius wrote, the mind adapts and converts to its purposes the obstacle to our acting. Your obstacles aren't roadblocks, they're raw material. Now go build something